I figured I'd do a how-to on wiring up these aftermarket LED headlights on this 1984 Nissan 720. And because there's not really a whole lot of information I'd found online other than a wiring diagram for an 82, which is very similar. Some of the wire colors are a little bit different. But a lot of guys were asking how to wire this up. So you'll have 4 low beam headlights at all times, and then you'll also have 4 high beams all at the same time. And I'll demonstrate the functions of that. Let's see. This is going to be our low beam. They're extremely bright. I'm very pleased with these particular lights. So it's real bright on the camera here, but in low beam it will light up a T in this headlight. It doesn't light up the entire light. You can kind of see there. And then once you do the high beam, these other LEDs will light up. So we got 4 low beams, and we'll hit the switch. And by wiring up this way, your high beam indicator will work properly. And for me, that's like a must. All right, let's see. You can kind of see it. All right, there's your high beam, low beam, your high beam. Okay, so we come out here. I've done this a few months ago, extremely bright on high, and so I'm gonna see if I can remember how to do this so I can share it with everyone. Okay, now I learned with this truck that the headlights aren't wired as you would think or as a H4 light would be. You'll have on your light socket, you'll have a hot wire, or I call it a hot wire, a power wire when you turn the light switch on. Okay, so the switch will determine if it grounds the low beam portion of the element in the light or the high beam element. So to do this, you'll probably need the basics of how electricity and how it operates. You'll need to know the standard operation of a 12 volt test light and how a relay operates. And to do this, I just used 2 relays. I purchased 2 H4 headlight socket repair kits so I could wire up the center lights to work in the low and high beam functions. Okay, so we'll look at the driver's side today. The wires don't look the greatest because I just kind of spliced them together and heat shrink them and just haven't really done anything other than that. This is a little farm truck, so it's not like a showpiece or anything. I just put around with it and do things around the property. Alright, so let's get started. With these headlights, what I went ahead and did is I run a ground for all 4 headlights. And I just got it run across the shroud, or I guess the radiator core support, I'm sorry. And it just comes over here, comes right behind the washer fluid reservoir and just grounds. So all the headlights ground there. Okay, and since this is a switch ground circuit, as soon as you turn your headlights on, you'll have 12 volts. So what you're going to want to do is get your test light out, and let's see if I can grab it in here. Okay, I was looking at the back side of the factory terminal here. Alright, now if I can look at this and remember how I've done it. Alright, this bottom, see if it's if you're looking at the end, it's going to be the bottom left. It's going to have 12 volts on it as soon as you turn on the light switch. So what I've done with that is it's wired, or I re-pinned this as well. I pinned that for the low beam for this LED light. Okay, now since it's 12 volts, we're running this guy over here to our relay. Alright, So we're going to use that for our relay on the, let's see, let me get that in the camera here. All right, we're going to have, I put 12 volts here, and then I jumped it across to 87 as well, if I remember. It doesn't really matter how you pin that, as long as it's, if you understand how a relay works. As you can see, it's coming in here, loops back across to this side. All right, and this red wire by itself, yes, this red light here, this is what's going to feed the high beam. Since this only has one power, and typically you have two powers in a single ground, we have one power and two grounds. So what I've done, you'll have to locate your, put your headlight switch in high and locate which wire is grounded when your high beam's on. So in order to do that, you'll take your test light, you're going to put it on your positive terminal, turn your headlight switch on high beam, you'll come across to your light socket that you're working on, you'll disconnect it, or you could possibly, I'd probably just go ahead and disconnect it. Okay, with the high beams on, touch it to each one until you find it to light up. Okay, now that's going to be your high beam ground. So what I did is, it's going to be this wire here I've used. We're going to use that ground to ground this relay. So we got power on this side, and then that high beam ground is going to ground this side. It's going to energize this magnet, okay? When it does that, it's going to close this switch that's inside of the relay. And by doing that, we're going to send power out of the relay, and that's going to go to our lights socket and power up the high beam. So yeah, I know it looks like a mess. It sounds complicated, but it's actually very easy now that I come across the wiring diagram and wired up. I wish I would have done this a little prettier, but all right, let's see here. Looks like this green wire here is going to be a ground. So in the middle down here, it's one of those replacement wires, repair kits you can get at pretty much any parts store. Alright, let's see. I believe that blue is going to be our low beam power. And we got our, I think it's going to be green wire. Yes, the green is what I'm using for ground. Alright, so as soon as you turn on the headlight switch, it's going to power up this wire. I can't quite make out the factory color. It looks like it's red and black, but it's also different from side to side. But in order to find this power wire, you just use your test light, put the test light ground lead on the ground, turn on your headlight switch, and find your power. And wire it into your socket here. So 12 volts when the light's on. We got our own grounds for our lights. Okay, it's pretty simple there. Lights up a light socket. And as soon as you flip it on high, it's going to ground your relay. And then coming out of your relay is going to be this wire. This is for the center light, your high beam here. If we come across, that was a mess, but it's teed in right there. If I was to redo this, I wouldn't have so many connections here, but this is the first one I did, and I was working on figuring out how the world Nissan decided to wire this. And but I would definitely use some heat shrink. It's out here in the environment. Don't want water intrusion and make corrosion and have all kinds of issues. But these lights actually fit very well. I was very pleased with how they fit. Some guys say they have to trim their bezels. I didn't. I just had to push them on slightly firmly when I was putting these in. But they fit well. The light doesn't shake inside of it, which is to me is pretty important. But it's pretty easy to do this. This is your standard H4 socket. You want to, as you can see, is looking end to end of your plug is here. And then ground. I ran grounds for all 4 light sockets and run them over to the passenger side. You take your test light, put it on your ground, on your battery, turn your light switch on, find your 12-volt wire. Okay, once you find your 12-volt wire, lighting up your test light, you're going to want to hook that wire up to here. Super simple. And then you're going to wire up a relay, and from this point you'll take your test light, put it on the positive side of your battery, turn your high beams on, and on your factory plug, you're going to touch your test light to each one till you find it to light up your test light. When you do that, you're finding the ground for your high beam, and you're going to wire your relay so that that ground is triggering your relay to turn it on. But I used the 12 volt for your low beam. It also powers up the relay on both sides, the control side and the low side, because we're dealing with LEDs. They're not pulling a bunch of power. This is the same 12 volt wire that would light up your standard headlight, as from the factory. So these LEDs pull a little bit less power. Hopefully this is clearer than muddy water, but yeah, once you wire this sucker up, you'll have 4. You'll do this on each light socket. I just hooked the high beams together. You could do this with 1 relay, but I just chose to do 2. But by wiring it up that way, you'll keep the functionality of your high beam indicator, which is kind of cool. So we got low beams, we got our high beams. Hopefully this is helpful for some folks. Again, I've done this a couple months ago, so I just kind of run through and try to remember how I've done it, because I work on vehicles every day, so I don't tend to remember what I do from day to day, especially something I've done months ago. But anyway, guys, hopefully this is helpful, and it'll get your little Nissans with some bright headlights. I'll try and put a link in to where I got these lights from, and see how you guys like them.